Thank you for joining NAA's daily micro webinar. My name is Stephanie Anderson, and I am the Industry Operations Manager here at the National Apartment Association. If you are new to our series, thank you so much for joining us. If you have been with us on this journey, we do welcome you back and thank you for your continued support. In an effort to provide our membership with timely operational guidance amid COVID-19, we are producing daily updates in the form of micro webinars. Each day, we will focus on a different topic relevant to the apartment industry. At this time, I would like to direct your attention to the screen. Please take a moment to review our disclaimer. Today, I am happy to introduce Jim Wilson, Director of Political Affairs at the National Apartment Association. Jim will be discussing the NAA Grassroots campaigns for COVID-19. Jim, welcome and thank you for being here today.
Great, Stephanie. Thanks very much for having me, and thanks for everything that you guys in Industry Ops are doing for everybody during this really unique and unprecedented time. It's been an incredible challenge. We're on calls with the government affairs staff all day long, like many of you are, trying to figure out some of the different policy interpretations of different things that have been passed on the federal level, the state level, and the local level. And we have a small inkling for what it's like for you in the management community, trying to handle all these questions and handle all the things you're getting from your residents as well. What I want to just take a few minutes to talk about is how we're trying to respond on the grassroots level and to make federal legislators aware of the needs that we have in the apartment industry. As Stephanie mentioned, I'm the Director of Political Affairs, so I often wear the NAA PAC hat, raise funds, try to support people who are helpful to us in Congress. The other hat that I wear is directing our grassroots programs. So trying to harness the power of all 82,000 of our members and all the other members throughout our affiliate network to make our voices in the industry loud and make sure that it's heard by policymakers, in this case on Capitol Hill. So I'll talk a little bit about what the context is and how we've tried to respond and what our grassroots campaign is looking like right now. Some of the things that I know everybody on this webinar will know, some of the primary impacts in terms of policy that we've seen from the coronavirus. Of course, there are millions unemployed, getting to the point where we're seeing tens of millions. And for our industry, one of the primary impacts or consequences of that is how many residents can still pay their rent, and how many residents either through some lack of clarity in some of these eviction moratorium, some encouragements of folks who have decided to take this time to promote rent strikes, how many people will pay the rent, even if they can. On the other hand, we know that because of quarantines and stay-at-home orders in just about every jurisdiction you can think of, folks are staying home. I'm in the guest bedroom of my house right now. In the apartment community, we know that maintenance costs and maintenance activity has increased significantly because folks are at home. They're putting more demand on apartment and building systems. They have, light bulbs that need changing. The unfortunate consequence of some of this is that people are beginning to flush things down toilets that don't go down toilets. So that means that those units have to be operated on, they have to be maintained, and that's putting a huge strain in our maintenance community as well. And in both your local, state, and federal arenas, we're seeing different types of moratoriums on evictions in terms of who they apply to, how long those moratoriums apply for. There's a lot of different intersections in terms of what the federal moratorium says. I'm not going to go into all of those details. There are plenty of resources available on the NAA website, but let's just say there's a lot of different intersections. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of confusion out there. The same thing goes for the mortgage forbearance that's available. If you have a property that has a federally backed mortgage from Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, or if you take any Section 8 vouchers at all, there's mortgage forbearance tied to that as well. How does that work? And most of what we've seen in the news from the last go around of federal relief, the so-called CARES package that was passed on March 27th, there are provisions in there for small businesses things that they can take advantage of: the Paycheck Protection Program, some of the loans administered by the Small Business Administration. There's been a lot of confusion over some of those programs as well, things that apply to our members. And so what we're trying to do as we go forward through the next phase of what hopefully will advance at the end of April, the beginning of May, is try to clarify some of these concerns. But let's talk about what we did so far leading up to that CARES Act that passed on March the 27th. The CARES Act is also called sort of phase 3. The first phase was the initial $8 billion package. The phase 2 was some expansions of emergency medical leave that were put into place. So phase 3 was the first large set of fiscal and regulatory legislative responses to the coronavirus and the impact it was having on the economy. It's probably really easy to look at the news these days or any day and be cynical about the political process. But I would say, as an observer, it's actually quite remarkable how quickly Congress and the administration came together to pass a package of over $2 trillion to try to address the impacts of coronavirus on the economy. Now, phase 3 is not perfect, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but it came together with incredibly rapid speed and trying to address so many different concerns at the same time. And in some ways, it's very remarkable. As we came out of the Advocate Conference, which I still can't believe was only a month ago, we realized what some of the needs were going to be as we realized how quickly things were going to shut down. Our ask in this third phase of the Grassroots campaign for phase 3 was going to be some kind of rental assistance program, so that for those folks who were going to be furloughed, who were going to lose their jobs, who are going to either be sick or have a sick relative to take care of, who are not going to be able to meet their full rent obligation in a given month, that there be assistance in place for those folks so that they know that they don't have to worry about anything. And the folks who operate and own those communities know that they are going to be able to meet their own obligations, their own mortgages, their own utility bills, pay their own maintenance workers and on-site staff. The other main portion of our ask was to make sure that any eviction moratorium implemented by the federal government was going to match the length of the forbearance periods for any federally backed mortgage. Right now, what we are seeing is, or what we saw once the CARES Act came out, was that the moratorium on evictions was 120 days. The forbearance periods for mortgages was 90 days. Obviously, those things are not aligned, they're not in sync, and we were seeing those proposals come through, and we were asking Congress as loudly and as often as we could to make those match up. This Grassroots campaign concluded on March the 25th, and we had a little over 13,000 letters that were sent from our members to Congress. By way of comparison, our previous high water mark for Grassroots campaign through NAA was 1,500 last year on a HUD regulation that was going through. So this is a significant increase. It's good to see that, but we still have a lot more work to do because those two big asks were not addressed in the CARES Act. And so we're now moving to our next phase, the phase 4 campaign. Hopefully Congress will be back in session sometime in the beginning of May. Both notices issued this week in the House and the Senate indicate they will both be in recess through at least May the 4th, excuse me. So any action that's going to be done legislatively has to be done through a process called unanimous consent. Basically, no one has to object to what's being proposed. And that's extraordinarily complicated because anything else that's going to be agreed to is going to be complicated. So we're looking at a likely return of Congress on May the 4th. And so we have a number of requests for our campaign, which started earlier, the tail end of last week on Thursday. We want to make sure that there is an emergency rental assistance program that's created to make sure that folks who have a true hardship because of COVID-19 and are unable to meet their obligations, that the owners and operators of those properties know that those obligations can still be met. We're still trying to figure out the best mechanism to do that. There are a number of existing models. We're trying to figure out the best way to accomplish that. And we are eager to hear from members on their input for what has worked in the past as well. We want to make sure that the eviction moratoriums that exist are tailored to the length of mortgage forbearance. We also want to make sure that it's clear that owners continue to have the ability to effectively manage their own communities for health and safety reasons. One of the things in the phase 3 eviction moratorium for federally guaranteed or backed mortgages is that the evictions seem to be, the moratorium seemed to be applied globally. It didn't only limit owners from evicting folks or serving notice to evict for folks who had a COVID-19 related hardship. So if there was any kind of safety concern, any kind of criminal activity going on, it wasn't clear, it still isn't really clear if owners have the ability to begin an eviction process right now. We want to make sure that that's clarified in the future package. We want to make sure that there's a greater expansion of mortgage forbearance to beyond just federally backed loans. So if you have a mortgage from somewhere else and you are seeing delinquencies crop up because of people being unable to pay the rent, you have the ability to get some kind of forbearance. We want to make sure there's other kinds of financial assistance available for other kinds of financial obligations that properties are going to have, whether it be utilities, whether it be other kinds of property taxes that they have to pay, other things that are going to pile up. Residents can't pay the rent. That has a huge cascading effect on our owners and operators' ability to pay their obligations, which then has a cascading effect on other sectors of the economy as well. So we're trying to get Congress to understand that if we don't address this the first place, at the first domino, if you will, a lot of other dominoes are going to fall. And the more that we can get in front of this, the better off everyone's going to be. Last and not least, we want to make sure that all multifamily businesses have the ability to take advantage of the Paycheck Protection Program. You've heard a lot about this. There were a couple of things that when the CARES Act was passed, the Small Business Administration issued some guidance right off the bat, and they did some things to tailor the eligibility for it that left a lot of multifamily out. This goes to things like whether or not the owner can take it, or whether the management company has access to it, or whether or not a management company that might have more than 500 people, but those folks are spread through a number of different locations, a number of different properties. Exceptions were made for fast food locations, for example, that might have more than 500 employees. Exceptions were made for hotel and lodging that might have more than 500 employees, but they're spread across a number of sites. That has not been extended to multifamily. We want to make sure that it has. As of yesterday, we had about 9,200 messages sent on our campaign. As of a little while ago, we're up over 10,000 now. We're going to maintain this campaign for at least another week, probably even 2 weeks, because we're going to continue to want to stress to Congress that we have to find a way to address some of these concerns for the apartment industry. And what that means by keeping this campaign going is that if you take this is just a technical thing, but if you take action on the campaign, what we do is when we send it again, we don't send it to the people who've already taken action on it. It's usually a best practice. If you've told your senator once through a message, we don't want you to end up telling them 4 or 5 different times. We want other colleagues of yours from your state to tell that senator. But there's no need for you to have to tell them again and again and again. If we need another campaign on Grassroots, we'll come back to you at that time. And just so you know how to get involved, if you haven't got involved so far, again, we sent on our alert on April 9th. We resent it to everyone who hadn't taken action yet on Monday. I resent it again earlier this morning Eastern time. But if you go to the NAA website, naaq.org, Advocacy Action Center, Advocacy 365, that alert is right there, top and center. You can click on that. You fill in your address, it automatically sorts you with your member of Congress and with your 2 senators. The other thing that we are beginning to prepare as well is what we would call grass tops communications. Grassroots, for lack of a more artful way of putting it, is volume. That's everybody in the industry, the thousands of people who work in our industry, talking together at once with one message, with one voice to Congress. Grass tops are folks who are active in the industry, but who may have a deeper relationship with their elected representatives. We've taken advantage of that through any number of times. The tax reform campaign in 2017 is the most recent example. But if you may know through your kids being on the same soccer team because you went to high school with them, because you know them through commercial real estate, or because you've attended a fundraiser or an event for them, you may have a better relationship with your member of Congress or your senator than just sending them a note. We want to make sure that we capture as many of those relationships as possible. So you can see there the link to take our key contact survey. That survey takes about 5 minutes, and we collect all of those. And that way, when we're getting ready, if we know that someone says, well, I actually knew Senator so-and-so, we were roommates in college, there's no way for me to know that unless you tell me. And you can better believe that I'm going to reach back out to you and say, please give them a call and let them know we need a rental assistance program. Please give them a call and let them know that we need to sync up some of these eviction moratoria with the mortgage forbearance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you have a relationship with an elected official where they're basically going to have their front office take your call and pass them back, you're definitely someone we want to be aware of. So we're trying to get at it. We're trying to create kind of a surround sound effect in this campaign. We want the volume of everybody in the industry talking to Congress, but if you have a relationship with them, we want to make sure we know of that as well, so that we can sort of put you into action, if you will, with that elected official. So I think that is pretty much all that I have for you on the campaign. Again, if you've seen it, please take action. If you haven't seen it, please look for it. Please share that link far and wide. There's no kind of legal restriction, like PAC fundraising, for example, that we have to abide by. If you're concerned about the industry, if you know folks who are concerned about the industry, even if they don't work in the industry, anybody can take action on it. So we really want to take advantage of the strength and numbers that we have in the apartment industry, and let Congress know that it's important for them to fix some of these things the next time they put a package together. And you can see the inbox that we've set up since the middle of March to take any questions that you have about COVID-19, how it's impacting operations for the industry. So please send those questions in. They'll get routed to the right people. And please keep sending us your questions so that we can get the right answers out to you, the right guidance for you. So thank you again all for listening, and please take action if you haven't already, and happy to turn it back to Stephanie.
Jim, thank you so much for sharing your expert knowledge with our members today. This is such a crucial and important topic with the Grassroots campaign, so we do thank you for doing that. For any of our members watching today, should you have any questions, comments, concerns about anything related to coronavirus, we do encourage you to use the email address on your screen, cv19questions@naahq.org. And we thank you again for being here with us today and look forward to you joining us tomorrow for another great micro webinar. Thank you and have a great day.